Yeah, it doesn't ever slow down.
No. Good morning.
Good morning.
We were just talking about how it is already May 4th,
Yeah.
and our year is almost halfway over, which is amazing to think about.
Yeah.
Especially as it seems like how slow last year went. Or maybe I didn't go slow, because that's not the way that works. But considering the challenges of last year.
There you go.
It's kind of funny how quickly the first almost 6 months have gone, 5 months have gone
Yeah.
into the year. So today we're talking about kind of following up from Sunday, like being on mission. What does it mean to be on mission?
Mhm.
And I've gotten I shouldn't say a lot. I've had several people, I guess, say, hey, yeah, Sunday was really good.
Yeah.
Because we got to see a cross section of people on, like, just serving God
Yeah.
in the everyday life.
Yeah, and when you say cross section, multi-generational,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is something we really want to be intentional about here at Westway
Yeah.
in everything that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had Lizzie Andrews.
Yeah.
I said teenager. I don't know if she's 12 or 13. So,
I think she's 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
middle school though.
Yeah.
Right. Middle school student.
8th grade. Yeah.
And then we had Sue Backer, who leads our grandparenting ministry. And then we had John at the end, like professional ministry, especially now that he's ordained. He's in real ministry now.
Yeah.
And that was, it was really, what I really wanted to do on Sunday was, obviously ordaining someone into ministry is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah.
But it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. I guess when I think about ordination, I always want to think about the meaning of the word. To set apart for a specific duty or task.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that John requested was that he be set apart,
right,
for ministry, and specifically for him right now, it's in the ministry of visiting with international students on campus, and yet to recognize that we have a desire to do something specific for God and to commit ourselves to that is really, when I was ordained, that was the idea of that was that we feel that God has given us gifts and talents that He wants us to use,
right,
and to make a declaration, if you will, and to go with the blessing of the home congregation to pursue that.
To pursue a very, like you said, a very specific aspect of ministry with international students right now for the moment that kind of he's in.
Yeah, yeah.
And that goes back to what we talked about the previous 2 weeks. So the week before, 2 weeks ago, we talked about 1 Corinthians 12, about the gifts within the body, the members of the body, the parts of the body. Dave Robinson came over to my house on Friday, and we talked for like 2 hours on Logos, however you pronounce that. Logos, Logos. There's an app called Log, however you pronounce that word. It's like a Bible study app essentially.
I love it.
And we talked about lots of things, but one of the things we talked about was just that word members, parts, different aspects of the body, and from 1 Corinthians 12, as Paul transitions to what we call 1 Corinthians 13, verse 31 in 1 Corinthians 12. So you should earnestly desire the most helpful gifts. So like the gift, like what do we? I say this all the time. The little note that's there in my Bible that I made. What do we need right now?
Right.
So when we ordain someone at Westway Christian Church, what we're really doing is specifying and sending them into a very specific role as a Christian.
Yeah.
As someone who's going to serve in ministry, like very, very, very detailed and specified. And part of what we talked about in our small groups, and I'm sure you talked about them in your small groups. So are my spiritual gifts, like, does God have a special gift for me? Or does God have gifts for the entire church that we're a part of? And the way I answered that question was yes.
Yeah.
God has specific gifts for you.
Right.
And he has a specific set of gifts, a specific task that he's given to the church that we all perform and fulfill.
Yeah.
And John 3's piece of that puzzle is CSF working with international students.
Yeah. Something I noticed on Sunday morning, I don't know if we ever explained what CSF is.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't.
Yeah, that's called. It's an acronym for Christian Student Fellowship, and it's an organization that I don't know if it's just Nebraska that has this. I know that what would you call him? The one that oversees the program.
Is that Justin Ralston?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I believe he's in Wayne, at the church in Wayne. But he organizes on the campuses around Nebraska for sure, probably other states too, for these groups to be set up to allow for fellowship between the students,
right,
and to reach out into the community that they're in.
Yeah, so it's a ministry that serves and makes disciples of students, serves Christian students, and makes disciples of students that are not yet Christians on campus, and provides an opportunity for them to be discipled.
Yeah, yeah, and to be in fellowship with one another, and to minister into their community.
And on the campus of UNK, University of Nebraska at Kearney, we didn't talk about this.
Yep.
They have two parts to CSF in Kearney. They have I don't want to call it. I'll just say they have CSF, and then they have CSF for international students.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like the other one is to American or national
I think
students.
they're pretty much connected.
Yeah. But John works specifically with international students on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Kearney.
Yeah.
And that's he has had, God has given him a heart for people of the nations outside of our nation. And he demonstrated that several years ago. He went to El Salvador.
Yeah.
I think that was 10 or 14 days. That was like a spring break trip. And then 2 summers ago, in 2019, he went to Jordan, the country of Jordan, in the Middle East for 3 months, and worked with primarily Muslims there in Jordan. So he is wired by God.
I would say it's a giftedness.
To work with international students.
Yeah, I think he truly identified a giftedness that God has given him, and recognized that and had the desire to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, just as John has been given that specified. I want to, for some reason, I want to use a pie metaphor, because I guess the body's not enough. Like John's slice of the ministry pie is working specifically with international students. And then, but what about people who aren't ordained? And this is where I really wanted to make sure, as big of a deal as that was, each one of us as a Christian we are all also called into ministry.
Yeah.
We are all called maybe not in the same exact way that John is called, in that that's my vocation, like that's my job.
Yes.
This is,
it's a fine line there. Because I believe that God calls all of us to ministry.
Yes.
It may not be the way we earn our keep, if you will.
Yeah.
But it is something that each of us should desire to do day in and day out, wherever we are, whomever we're around, that we might be in ministry to them.
Yeah. So in talking with Lizzie, and Luann has shared, Lizzie is 14 in 8th grade, so thanks, Luann, for that note.
Yeah.
the way Lizzie Andrews fulfills her call to ministry is by being a 14-year-old in the 8th grade. She talked about being kind, by being and demonstrating what kindness from God looks like.
Yeah.
And she is on youth praise team, she said.
Yep.
And with I think in conjunction with a few other students here at Westway, they lead a Sunday morning Bible study for girls at Westway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a non-Bible college educated person, like, she is just living life on mission in her context, which is a 14-year-old in 8th grade. So the question is, like, how do I do that?
Yeah. I love the way she shared. And also I've asked another one of the gals that I think is helping to lead it. And I mentioned the leadership part, and she said, no, we don't really lead it. We're there to be involved in it.
Right.
And I thought what a great attitude.
Right.
Obviously, by being there and being involved in it, and one of the words we say that we like to encourage in the culture that we want to develop is being present.
Yeah.
Just by being present, you're leading.
Right.
And obviously they do a little extra prep work to be prepared for it, but that's the humble attitude of ministering to others.
Right.
I think that's a great example, and I think Lizzie would say the same thing.
Yeah.
She really doesn't consider herself as being the leader.
Right.
But she obviously is part of those that are doing that and leading in that way.
Right. And then we talked to Sue,
yep,
who is our grandparenting team, ministry team leader.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about both Lizzie and Sue in the interview that we did with them, we spent very little time intentionally on what they do here.
Yeah.
Within the church as an organization to make disciples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they have I like that you talked about having this fine line. They have a life outside of this place.
Yeah.
And Sue's discipleship, Sue's ministry, is not just about what she does here in the organization of Westway Christian Church, but what she does at Regional West.
Right.
So how she interacts with other people is, as much as what she does here is her ministry, her life is her ministry outside of this place.
Yeah, and I love the way she put it. The way I do that is by being kind to people, by living a life that is an example to them. It is a light to the area that I'm in. Yeah.
So this is one of those times where we talked a little bit about what we were going to talk about, and I don't know if we're going to get there. So you and I and Pastor Mike, we're professional Christians. Like, we get paid to do this, right?
Yeah, that'd be a way to put it.
What is your ministry outside of this place? because I think because of the way our culture has been cued to think about things, and this is what I was really pushing on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like my job, my literal job, your literal job is to make disciples. You get paid to make, like, this is crazy to think about, but you get paid to make disciples. I get paid to make disciples. Mike gets paid to make disciples. When Cody starts here in just a couple weeks, he's going to be paid to make disciples.
Yeah.
What does that look like for, because like when we walk out of here at the end of the day, we might clock out from our being paid to make disciples, but that doesn't end when we leave.
Exactly.
So what does that look like for you?
I'm a little unique in this, I guess, in that I have another job. I work part-time at Target, and like Sue, like Lizzie at school, like John when he goes to Wendy's or whatever for coffee with someone, the way I live my life is how people may come in contact with the presence of Christ. And what I mean in that is what people see in me, especially knowing that I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
They're gonna make a judgment call, if you will. Is this really what a Christian is, or not? And so, in one sense, what I do, what I say, how I do it, how I say it, how I treat others, is going to be an example of something.
Right.
And they're going to automatically assume, because I am a pastor and they know that, that's what a Christian should be like. And so it puts a little pressure on me. Same way when I go to the golf course. Same way when I go to the grocery store. Wherever I go, I should take Christ with me and live my life for Him. And it says it a couple times in scriptures in a couple of different places. Whatever I do, I should do it as if I'm doing it for the Lord. Right. And so that's what being in ministry is about.
And the weird part of this is what Joe just described as I should take Christ with me wherever I go. That's not a professional paid Christian mindset.
Right.
That is like when we walk out, when you walk out of here, if you're here on Sunday morning for the 10:15, when you walk out of here at the end of the 10:15, like, you as a Christian are still on the clock.
Yeah.
You do not punch out. You take your faith. Actually, I'm going to flip this. I am called to take my faith home in the exact same way that you are when you leave.
Yeah.
On Sunday I usually leave 12:15 to 12:30. When I walk out the door, I'm still on the job as a Christian. And honestly, so is everyone who calls themselves a Christian, who is a part of Westway. When you walk out the door at whatever time you walk out of here on Sunday morning, you're still on the clock.
Yeah.
And one of my little Sunday routines is, Anne often works on Sunday afternoons because that's her day to get a bunch of stuff done and get a bunch of admin done, schedules. She does some baking and stuff like that. Yeah. So on Sunday afternoons, she usually goes right to Cap & Co. and does work. And I usually, on my way home, I stop at Panhandle Co-op and I get some fried chicken, and I get some macaroni and cheese. And when I walk into Panhandle Co-op at 12:30, I'm still on the clock as a Christian.
Right.
That, just because my Sunday job of preaching is done doesn't mean that I'm not on the clock.
Yeah, that's right.
And what we really want to communicate to our church body, and what God wants to communicate to our church body, is being a follower of Christ is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week task.
Yeah.
And I do that task a lot of my time here in the building, working on sermons, leading meetings, and meeting with people, and all of those kinds of things. And you, as a Christian, you fulfill your 24/7 role at school, at work, at home, in the grocery store, like whatever it is that you do with your life, that's how you live out your role as a Christian.
Yeah. One of the things that popped into my mind, we haven't done sports as a church group recently, but I know that in the past we've had softball teams and volleyball teams, and some have bowled on bowling teams, on church leagues and things like that. The same thing goes. Even in the sporting events where you get really wound up and really excited about stuff and competitive in it.
Right.
And we can still and should still be living the same standards, the same life in those moments as we do when we're here in this building.
And the thing is, as you're talking, we should never ever ever have to say that.
I know. Yeah.
That's like to me what we're talking about is so utterly basic. This is like Christianity 101 is, and this goes back to what we talked about last week in Romans 12. Like, because of what Christ has done, present your bodies as a living sacrifice.
Yeah.
The least, and this is what I said, almost verbatim. The least you can do because of what Christ has done, because of who Christ is, because of his salvation for you, the least you can do is to give your body to God.
Yeah. And then it goes on and talks about being transformed.
Right.
And that's a process. That's a continual process.
Yeah.
But it begins with a commitment to Christ and a renewing of the way we think.
Right.
And when we get that inside us and we begin to transform our minds, then what comes out, what happens, becomes more natural.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, if you haven't thought about this before, that you're on mission, and we talk about 24/7 being on mission. Maybe your initial response to that is wow, that sounds exhausting. To have to be on all the time.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, as a person who has been a professional Christian for going on 16 years, it is absolutely exhausting to be on all the time.
Yeah.
And I just mean, like, job-wise, it is like, I have to remember on one level, I have to remember that I'm a pastor and I represent Westway Christian Church, and I know what you're thinking right now. I can feel it. Let me finish before you. Let me finish before you say, because I know I can feel what you want to say. Like, on one hand, I have to remember that I'm a pastor and I represent Westway Christian Church, and every single thing I do is as a representative of Westway Christian Church, and that sounds exhausting, and it is exhausting, right? Like, I'm never not on, and that sounds really kind of weird, but I'm never not on. That's why someone can call me in the middle of the night and, like, I'm on. Like, it's time to do my job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that is not my motivation.
Right.
And now I'm answering your question that you were thinking. My motivation, like, I'm on as a follower of Christ.
Yeah.
And I have to be on all the time. And if all I'm thinking about is, oh man, I'm a pastor and I'm a representative of Westway Christian Church, that's not enough.
Right.
I have to always be on as a Christian. And that too is equally exhausting. And that's why so much of what we talk about is we can't do that under our own strength.
Yeah. Yeah. It is exhausting. But I know that the desire that I have within my heart is such that I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because my desire is that I be in community with Christ always.
Right.
And it isn't easy. But my strength doesn't, if I try to do it on my strength,
Right.
I can't
Right.
do it on my strength.
Right.
But he has promised me, with my desire to be connected with him, that he will be with me always. Mm-hmm. And that's the beautiful part, is he gives me the strength. And so often the exhaustion comes because we tend to try to do it on our own strength.
Right.
And when we are able to get to that point where we continually recognize his presence within us, maybe the exhaustion's a little less. Mm-hmm. A little less.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that last night in our small group. And one of the gals was talking about it at her job and her opportunity to be in discussion about church and about her commitment to Christ and her desire to live for him even at work in the grocery store, and how she has begun to realize in this last year that she always thought her husband was going to be the one to do this kind of thing, witnessing to people, and how that God is calling her and placing her in a position where she has opportunity to share why she does what she does, and why it means so much to her to do it for Christ.
Yeah,
and that's awesome when we come to that realization that she said, I've been praying for opportunity to share for a long time, but never expected it to be like this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what's so neat about it, our Savior and our Lord, is that he gives us opportunity.
Right.
And it's when we open our eyes and say, okay, I'm ready for that opportunity, and I'm looking for that opportunity, that, oh, there it is. And we have that opportunity to share.
Right.
Why we do what we do.
Right. And that's at the beginning of the message on Sunday. I talked about just some of the anxiety and the distress that I feel on Sunday mornings. And part of that's normal.
Yeah, it is.
And part of that's good. Like I'm reading, just on this same note, I ordered a few books over the weekend because of this, honestly, because of this anxiety and this distress. I want to learn a little bit more about that. So I ordered some books written by Christian authors about how to deal with those things. Mm-hmm. And one of the books I'm reading, the title's slipping my mind right now. One of the books I'm reading talks about how there's a level of anxiety that's normal because we care.
Yeah.
It's in Paul. I don't remember which book it's in. You might remember the reference. But Paul, a few times, Paul gives these lists of all of these hardships that he's faced in his life.
Yeah.
And at the end of one of those lists, and it's like shipwrecks and a sea and hunger and thirst and all these kinds of things. At the end of one of these lists, he says something like, "Plus, I bear the burden of the churches."
Yes. Yeah.
And like there's not, I would say there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel that weight.
Yeah.
I don't feel that anxiety and that distress.
Yep.
But the thing that gets Paul through that, is that Philippians 4?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets Paul through that is the strength of Christ, relying on Jesus.
Yeah.
So when you hear me talk about that anxiety and distress, I don't really want you to freak out about that. I want you to pray for me, and specifically pray that I would lean into the power of Christ in that, because I tend to go to a place where I want to do that all on my own.
Right.
And that's not that's not going to get the goal, accomplish
Yeah.
the goal that we want to accomplish as followers.
Yeah, and I think that our desire to do it well, our desire to really set that good example, motivates us to the point where we have that anxiety, and for me, I've had to try to figure out where is that point where I know that I've done everything I can,
Right.
that
Right.
God has asked me to do,
Yeah.
because He's asking us to do this,
Yeah.
and just trust that God will take that
Yeah.
and make something beautiful out of it.
Yeah, that was, we've talked a little bit about this before. That was one of my least favorite parts of sermon prep during shutdown last year.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we would record on, we would usually record on Sunday or Monday for the following week.
Mm-hmm.
And what that meant was, when I was done, I just had to get out of this space very quickly of worrying about, should I have said this? Oh, I wish I would have added that. But what about this verse?
Yeah.
What about that story?
Yeah.
I had to and it took me a while, and I didn't know that that's what was going on. But I had to get to this point where I was just like, well, the sermon's done. It's already been recorded. I can't add anything to it. I can't take anything from it. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I love the way you're talking about this. Like, there's a point in the week where I realize, like, we're just we're just done. Like, I'm just done with what I have, and I'm going to trust God. That's not fatalistic. It is what it is. I'm just going to trust that God has this. He knows more of what I'm going to do with my message than I will, and I just have to be done.
Yeah. And that carries through on a Sunday morning now, because we're live.
Right.
And all of the technology and things that we use. There's things that happen, and we have no control over
Right.
that.
Right.
And you mentioned this last week. Not this last Sunday, but the Sunday before, in trusting that God's going to take whatever failure of technology that happens, and still it's going to be good.
Right.
And we're learning how to do that.
Yeah, and that's hard, and that's so much of what Paul talks about throughout 1 Corinthians is they lived in a time where people's ability to speak well elevated them. And Paul's mindset throughout the book of 1 Corinthians is, all I got is Jesus. So I know I'm not the best speaker. I can say that as being Paul, and I can say that as being me.
Me too.
I know I'm not the best speaker, so I'm just going to proclaim Jesus and just let it happen. So Mike Andrews, the pastor who's not sitting in the room with us, he sent me the book that I was talking about is called Managing Leadership Anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's by a pastor, and it's just like learning how to deal with that stress, learning how to deal with that anxiety. And all of this conversation is because we want you to know that when we talk about being on mission, it is a 24/7 thing. And that sounds scary, that sounds exhausting. It sounds like, I know we all don't want to be on for every waking moment, but we are. But because of who Christ is and because of His strength, we can be obedient to Him.
Yeah.
So if you're worried, just like, it's simple. I'll make this really simple. Just give it to God.
Yeah.
Which
really,
I don't
that's
always
it.
do very well.
Yeah.
In that.
I really do want to ask the two questions on the
Okay.
end of this.
Okay.
Each week we try to prepare, and John's been doing this, a study guide for us to dig deeper throughout the week. And two of the questions, the last two questions, and we didn't have a lot of time, or didn't take a lot of time last night discussing this, but I want to ask them because I think they're good questions for us to use, not necessarily as pastors, but as Christians. Why? Here's the first one. Why do you think God has added you to your present church today? I love that question because I think it's a way for us to search for that giftedness that God has given us and to look for ways to exercise that giftedness. Right. John was a great example on Sunday. Well, all three of them, Lizzie and Sue, are great examples of how they have discovered there are ways that God can use them in the ministry wherever they are. Mm-hmm. And when we say church body, we're talking about big C, right? And we're also talking about little c, right, here. And so this is a question that I think God wants each of us to struggle with, if you will.
Yeah. Why am I here?
Yeah. Why am I here? What is my purpose?
Right.
Yeah. And then the other one is, what do you do in your church that most effectively helps build up the body of Christ? And it goes back to that phrase of finding, what's the wording you use? Finding the gift that we can use best in ministry.
Right, and remembering that God has given us gifts to serve one another.
Yeah.
That is, that I think that's 1 Corinthians 12.
Yep.
I'm going to flip there real quick. Mm-hmm. A spiritual gift is given to each of us so that we can help each other. That's why you're here. Like, if we were to sum up, it's kind of like, I mean, someone asked Jesus, what's the greatest law, right? What's the most important commandment? Love the Lord with all your God, with all your heart, mind, mm-hmm. soul, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Why are you a part of the church that you're a part of? Why has God called you to be the church? To proclaim Jesus as Lord and to serve others.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
And when we ask these, and you have an older version, you need to make sure you have the updated version of the study guide. I think that is so important. Like, why do you think God has added you to your present church body? The answer to that question is not so that I can sit in a room with people twice a month.
Yeah.
That's not why.
Yeah.
What do you do that most effectively helps build up the body of Christ? You're right. These are questions that we need to be asking ourselves so that we are truly functioning in the way that God has called us to function as a church.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we find ourselves in that moment of this is really it. Right. This is what God is wanting me to do. There is an amazing blessing mm-hmm. that comes from that. And I wouldn't say satisfaction, because I think that maybe a little bit of satisfaction, but I think God is continually growing us and maturing right. us and putting us in position to stretch us so that we will grow and mature, and that may change over time.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that John is going to be working with international students at CSF forever.
No.
I just don't. I'm not like. I love it here, right? I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not going to be one of the pastors at Westway for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
it's just not what I'm going to do. Neither are you.
Right.
Neither is Mike. We talked about that this weekend. It's weird to say this, even though Cody's not even here yet. Yeah. Cody is not going to be the pastor of creative arts for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Just not how that works. And we want to be open and obedient to the places that God calls us.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways. This is one of the longer ones we've done in a while. There are so many ways for people to answer this question. Why do you think God has added you to your present church body? And what are you doing that most effectively helps build up the body? There are so many ways to do that here.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be upfront pieces, maybe on a praise team, giving a communion meditation. Some of them are going to be behind the scenes, preparing communion. Some of them are going to be picking up the trash in the auditorium at the end of the Sunday. Some of them are going to be pulling weeds out of the garden.
Yeah.
And every single one of those things, as we have talked about now for 3 weeks in a row, every single one of those things are equally valid and equally important in God's kingdom and in our church body.
Yeah.
And we do not have the right to say those things don't matter. We do not have the right to say, well, I'm not a real part of this body because all I do is pull weeds.
Yeah.
Or all I do is greet. We don't have that luxury.
Right.
And we want to encourage you in the best way possible, and that's why we ended this series in the way that we did. We want to encourage you in the best way possible to serve, to be a part of the work that God is calling our church to, to be a part of the work that God is calling us to as individuals, and join in what He is doing. Because as I said on Sunday, He's going to do it with you or without you.
Yeah.
And I want to be involved in that. I want to be involved in bringing hope to people who don't have it and giving meaning and purpose to people's lives. Because when I think about the world that we live in, there are a lot of people who don't have hope, who don't have meaning, who don't have purpose, they don't have love. And that's because they don't know who God is.
Yeah.
And we have that story.
Yeah.
And we get to tell them. And when you pull weeds in the garden, it sounds weird, you are proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's what we're called to do.
Yep. Maybe it's prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a group of people that the best thing they can do is pray. And I love them for that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love the way you said, take time to pray, asking God to reveal the truth to you about your fellowship, love relationship with Him and your Christian brothers and sisters. And when we do that, He gives us those opportunities. He opens our eyes to how we can minister to one another.
Right. This coming Sunday, we're going to continue to rejoice with those who rejoice. We have several high school graduates that over the next month are going to be graduating from Scottsbluff Gearing, maybe even further than that. I don't know all of our graduates. And we're going to be rejoicing with them. Their parents are in the process of writing blessings over their kids.
Yeah.
And we're going to just come alongside those parents and live out the gospel with one another. That's why we do these things. These are not just, I guess John didn't want to preach or Joe didn't want to preach this Sunday, so let's throw our seniors in there. No, this is an opportunity for us to rejoice with those who rejoice. And we want to encourage you to come ready to celebrate with those parents and with those students, because this is a milestone.
Yeah.
And we're excited to be able to come alongside those parents and students and do that. So I hope that you will join us at 10:15 on Sunday morning and be ready to rejoice with our high school graduates and their parents as they celebrate this huge piece of their lives.
It really is exciting to me because I have kids who were there, and one of them's coming back to be in ministry here because of what happened there.
Right.
And to send them out into the world with preparation to live for Christ. What a great thing.
Yep. So we're excited about that. Hope to see you on Sunday at 10:15. Thanks for watching so much. Thanks for being a part of our body.
Yeah.
And just go and be on mission today. So
God bless you all.
Yep. Love you. Praying for you. We'll see you soon.